this first. Nothing to see here, please.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a special report. As everybody knows, it's been a tough few weeks for Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. The multi-billion-dollar Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser Hotel, which was barely open for 1 year, has been shut down by Disney and then used as a tax write-off. Disney has also removed Kennedy's Willow sequel series from its streaming service less than 6 months after its premiere, and now it is also being used by Disney as a tax write-off. Reviews for the upcoming Indiana Jones movie have been poor, and it is currently unclear if the movie will even be able to recoup its massive production and marketing costs. In the past, on the many occasions where Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm have been in serious turmoil, I've always noticed that strange mainstream articles always seem to pop up in support of Kennedy for whatever reasons. And like clockwork, this morning the Direct published a seemingly sensational article by Richard Nebbins claiming that Star Wars Andor producer Tony Gilroy has called out the toxic fandom for attacking Kathleen Kennedy. Now, this headline is rather surprising for a number of reasons. First of all, it's rather odd that Tony Gilroy would be making such bombastic statements to the press when he's never really done so in the past. In addition, out of all the people that Kennedy has ever hired, Tony Gilroy is one of the only ones that is generally well liked by Star Wars fans. Unlike, let's say, Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams' crappy sequel movies, I think most longtime Star Wars fans consider Gilroy's work on Rogue One and Andor at least somewhat okay. So it wouldn't make much sense that he would be the one to attack them because he has no beef with them, and it really doesn't help him in any way. Not to mention that in most interviews to date, Gilroy has usually come off as rather polite and mild-mannered, especially when talking about fans, and after looking into this matter more closely, as we see so often with the access media these days, it turns out that there's much more to this Direct article than meets the eye. In fact, a careful analysis of the Direct article shows that this headline statement is not only just inaccurate, some might even say that it is an outright lie. You see, the Direct article was written based on a video interview that Tony Gilroy did with Deadline, another Access Media Shill publication, and all this article seems to be doing is taking quotes from that interview and presenting them mostly out of context. For example, the Direct article claims that, quote, Tony Gilroy addressed the toxicity he sees from fans towards Star Wars President Kathleen Kennedy. Looking at the comments that Kennedy sees every day, Gilroy was shocked by what he saw happen during his work on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now, the first red flag here is that during the time of Rogue One filming in 2016, there was very little online backlash to Kathleen Kennedy at all. The only Star Wars movie that had come out until that point was The Force Awakens, and while that movie was seen as somewhat of a rehash, fan goodwill towards her efforts was still very high. And indeed, if you look at Gilroy's video interview, this isn't exactly what he's being asked or what he's saying here at all. Let's first listen to what the interview is asking him.
The Star Wars universe, those fans out there, the internet, anytime you get into something like this, you're fighting against that even before you've written a word, you know. And the pressure on you as a writer, I'm just curious, do you care? Does it bother you, or does it energize you to do right by them as well, or what they expect, or take them into a direction they didn't expect?
As you can see, the interviewer doesn't call the fans toxic and mainly wants to know if any online comments from fans have influenced Gilroy's work. Now, let's listen to Gilroy's response.
It was shocking on Rogue because I didn't really have any exposure when Rogue happened and everything that happened. I was really blown back by what was going on and this thing that I hadn't paid attention to.
Notice how there's no mention of Kathleen Kennedy here at all.
You have to realize about that community that they love this thing so much. The hardcore, deepest, you have within that community, you have Shiites and Sunnis and Kurds, and you have all kinds of people who have different, but their love of the show and their love of what it means to them is something that you really have to pay attention to.
And Gilroy is only saying that the fans are very passionate, something that he didn't fully realize when he was working on Rogue One.
We could never, ever be cynical about it. We have to take it more seriously than anybody's ever taken it. We're never winking. We're never kidding it.
And to add insult to injury, the Direct described what I just showed you in the interview in a sub-headline titled, and/or producer slams toxic Star Wars fans, which in my opinion is 100% false.
And so we have this mix of people who know nothing about Star Wars on our show, and then we have a bunch of people on the show that are huge nerds, and it's the marriage of knowledge and history mixed with a real ambition to take it someplace else, with a hopefully respect for. I want the respect of that audience. Now,
while the direct article does mention Gilroy's comments about passionate fans and how he wants to respect them, they then slip in what I consider a half-truth. Under the same toxic fans banner, the direct claims that Gilroy doesn't envy the job Kennedy has to do with the comments that she has to see on the internet.
I do read what they, there's no way of doing it and not being controversial.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's impossible. And Kathy's job is like, I mean, you don't want to be Kathy and ever open the internet. It's just, I mean, what she goes through and it's been on for years, so.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
You got to you have pretty thick skin to do that.
When you listen to him talking, though, I'd say his rhetoric here is much milder. The way I understand it, Gilroy is saying that it's hard to make creative decisions without ever doing something controversial, and he wouldn't want to be Kathleen Kennedy looking at criticism from fans on the internet. But he never calls them toxic or even attacks them. In fact, he even suggests that he does actually find some of the criticisms interesting.
But I pay attention. I don't think we've made any real adjustments because of it, but it's been interesting to watch.
This is very different than the Direct's narrative. Next, the article suggests that while it's still unclear whether Kennedy will actually remain with Lucasfilm, Gilroy noted that she has all the support that she could ask for from inside as fellow writers and directors stand by her side. Now, I rewatched this interview twice and I can't seem to find such a statement from Gilroy in the interview. If you can find this segment in the interview, please let me know, because as far as I can tell, Gilroy never says any of this. Perhaps it's just a case of wishful thinking. Next, the article has another sub-headline. Toxic Star Wars fans called out for personal comments. And then it goes on to say, although there is always room for constructive criticism in the Star Wars universe, as there is with any franchise, Tony Gilroy empathizes with the commentary that Kathleen Kennedy has to see on such a regular basis. Again, I rewatched the video and I can't seem to find such a statement from Tony Gilroy about constructive criticism, toxic fans, or their personal comments. This interpretation here by the Direct, in my opinion, is at best a complete stretch. Now, I bet some of you are wondering, why is the Direct, an Access Media publication with over 5 million views a month, just completely twisting everything around, or in some instances, even seemingly just making shit up? Well, after doing some additional research, this is my theory, and again, this is just my personal opinion based on the facts that I've gathered. First of all, this article almost seems as though it could have been worded by a publicist, possibly working on Lucasfilm's behalf. Over time, I believe I've become more skilled at picking up little clues that would suggest this, and let me show you what I mean. The article sprinkles in what I like to refer to as Lucasfilm's greatest hits, such as Kelly Marie Tran leaving the internet after The Last Jedi. In many ways, this one's already a classic. As you know, The Last Jedi was considered a very divisive movie that alienated many longtime fans of the franchise. Lucasfilm have always tried to tie the backlash to that movie to its diverse casting choices, which is absolutely false. The real reason many fans didn't like that movie was that it presented Luke Skywalker as a bum that would abandon his friends and family during their time of need after trying to murder his nephew while he was sleeping. Considering that up until that moment, Luke Skywalker was considered one of the biggest cinematic icon heroes to ever grace the screen, many fans just didn't like this direction and felt that it was heavily influenced by modern-day trendy agendas, which really didn't sit well with fans. The part suggesting that Lucasfilm loved criticism as long as it's constructive has also been peddled over the years by the likes of Rian Johnson and even Kennedy herself. They like to throw that one in there to try to avoid being accused of dismissing fan sentiment, which in my opinion is pretty much what they usually do. But the article also features what seem like 3 brand new tracks from Lucasfilm, statements that sound to me like something that they came out of a Lucasfilm boardroom meeting. Track number 1 is, quote, "Currently, the Lucasfilm president is in the middle of rearranging the entire theatrical side of Star Wars, which reportedly is at the start of a 5-year plan to get back to the same glory it saw years ago." Ah yes, Kennedy's 5-year plan to restore Star Wars to former glory, because who better to do that than the person that ran the franchise into the ground to begin with? If anybody can revive the franchise, it's Kathleen Kennedy. Track number 2. And as this new slate develops, Kennedy continues to stand at the forefront, hyping up everything on the way over the next few months and years, which will hopefully put the galaxy far, far away back on top of the game. I mean, I highly doubt that a journalist just got up in the morning and wrote this paragraph. It once again seems like PR and marketing, and not any kind of investigative journalism. What amuses me, though, is that in what appears to be an attempt to compliment Kennedy, they're also acknowledging that Star Wars is no longer on top of its game, which is exactly what the so-called toxic fans are saying. Finally, we have the third track to wrap up this article. Star Wars will return with Ahsoka, which is set to premiere on Disney Plus in August. So it's even ending the article with a plug for a new show, which is also kind of suspicious. And if you're now wondering, why would the Direct just seemingly peddle this narrative for no apparent reason, I believe I have an answer to that as well. The Direct have many articles, sometimes even exclusive, about the MCU and Star Wars, and while their designated MCU Twitter account currently has 1.3 million followers, their designated Star Wars Twitter news account only has about 50,000 followers, a number that they would likely want to improve. Could the Direct have been promised early access to future Lucasfilm releases in return for some very specific favorable coverage? And maybe even some exclusive interviews with cast and crew? Well, I suppose anything is possible. Then again, it could all be just a big coincidence, right? Before we go, I'd like to thank both Twitter users DataRacer117 and Ciaran Red O'Keefe for bringing this entire matter to my attention. What did you think about the Direct's article about toxic Star Wars fans? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. But